Today, we're walking through the complete workflow for 3D printing retainers using SprintRay. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to produce consistent, high-quality retainers each time. Let's get started. This workflow starts in SprintRay Cloud. Your case will show up here in one of two ways. Either it comes in directly through scanner integration, or you manually upload STL files. To start a new print job, navigate to the Print tab and select New Print Job. Navigate to the Design tab. This is where you choose how your retainer is designed. SprintRay offers multiple design workflows, and each one is built for a different type of case and level of control. AI Retainer is the fastest, most streamlined workflow. In just a few minutes, this fully automated system generates a clinically validated design with the ability to review and request revisions if needed. For most day-to-day retainer cases, this is probably the workflow you'll use the most. Manual design is designed for customization and control. If you choose manual design, you'll have access to additional settings that allow you to customize the retainer. Gingival coverage determines how far the retainer extends towards the gum line, which affects both comfort and retention. Thickness is one of the most important settings. If you ever run into a retainer that feels too tight or too loose, this is usually one of the first settings to adjust. A thinner design with heavier blockout reduces tightness, while increasing thickness generally creates a tighter fit. Once you've selected your design type, upload your upper and lower scans. Once your files are uploaded, submit the case. When the design is ready, open it and review it carefully. Rotate the model, inspect the margins, check the thickness, and make sure everything looks correct before approving. Once you're satisfied, approve the design and send it to Print Setup. SprintRay also offers Print and Ship. With this workflow, you can upload your scans, approve the design, and have the final appliance produced and delivered directly to your office, ready to place. Now we're moving into Print Setup. Click Add to Print Job directly from your design, or go to the Print tab and select New Print Job to upload a file from your computer or cloud drive. From here, select your printer, build platform, and material. Before preparing the print, you'll see the option to edit advanced settings. For most workflows, you really shouldn't need to change these settings as they are already optimized to deliver consistent and reliable results. One of the settings you'll see is support type. Options for this include balanced, max strength, or max density supports. This controls how aggressively supports are applied to your print. For retainers, the default support settings are already optimized, and in most cases, no changes are needed. Next, you'll see layer thickness settings. You can increase the layer thickness to reduce print time, but keep in mind, this might slightly impact surface finish. Lastly, we have the Autopilot preferences. These settings determine how the software will automatically handle orientation, supports, and layout during print preparation. Once everything looks good, select Confirm. Support placement plays a huge role in print stability and final accuracy. For retainers, the system places supports along the incisal edges and key structural areas. As a general reference, upper arches typically require at least 3 supports per tooth along the incisal edge. Lower arches typically require around 2 to 3 supports per tooth. Additional supports are placed on cusp, both on the buccal and lingual surfaces to ensure stability. The system avoids placing supports in interproximal areas whenever possible and ensures supports do not overlap or touch. You'll notice the retainer is angled slightly, usually around 20 degrees, which helps optimize both support placement and print quality. The system orients the appliance so the interface faces away from the platform. This helps preserve internal accuracy and ensures proper support placement. By default, this workflow runs in Autopilot mode, which prepares the print so it's ready with a single click. For most users, we recommend leaving Autopilot on. If you'd like to make any manual adjustments, you can turn off Autopilot mode here. Once you do, the system will switch to the Tools panel, where you'll have access to options like orientation, supports, layout, and labeling. Once setup is complete, select your printer and send the job to the queue. At this point, your print is ready to start. Before starting your print, it's important to properly prepare your printer. Start with the build platform. Make sure it's clean, free of cured resin, and has no grooves or damage. Any debris or imperfection can affect adhesion and lead to print failure. Next, check the resin tank. If you're adding resin, shake the bottle for at least 30 seconds before pouring. Fill to at least the minimum line or just below the max fill line. If resin is already inside, make sure it's properly stirred and free of debris. Resin can separate over time, so it's important to make sure it's mixed thoroughly before printing. Confirm your resin is not expired. Expired resin can impact print quality, performance, and biocompatibility. Assign the correct material to the printer by scanning the barcode or by entering it manually on the touchscreen. At this point, you should have a clean build platform, properly mixed resin, and the correct material assigned. Now you're ready to print. There are a few ways to start your print from the printer. First, if you sent your print job to the queue, you can start the print job by opening the Queue tab. Select the print job and then select Start Now. Another option for starting a print from your printer is by using the AutoPrint feature. AutoPrint will enable direct printing of various indications without SprintRay Cloud. This feature will detect appliances from files, then nest and slice them directly on the printer. Before starting AutoPrint, make sure the STL file you want to use is already on the cloud. Select the AutoPrint tab from the touchscreen, select your indication, then select your file. The printer will automatically detect the print kit and resin you have on the printer. From this screen, you can change those settings if needed, or leave the automatic settings if everything looks correct. Once your print job has loaded, you can select Print Now. Your printer will begin with a preheating cycle. The build platform will lower to stir and heat the resin during this process. To manually preheat resin, simply select Preheat Resin from the home screen. Make sure the build platform is clean before starting. Once preheated, you have a 15-minute window to start the print before reheating. If a print is started after that 15-minute window, the printer will run another preheat cycle once the print job has started. Once the print is complete, wait for the safety lid lock to disengage before opening the printer. Remove the build platform. Take a moment to inspect the print closely and make sure everything printed as expected before continuing. Before washing, it is critical to make sure you are using clean and fresh IPA. Washing with dirty or saturated IPA can lead to cloudiness, discoloration, or visible residue on the retainer. Dirty IPA can also impact the fit. If residual resin is not fully removed, it can cure to the in-surface and affect how the retainer sits on the patient. Before placing the build platform into the Pro Wash, make sure the correct adapter is installed. Different build platforms, such as the Arch Kit or Duo Kit, require their corresponding adapter to fit properly in the wash unit. Once ready, you can insert the build platform. For retainers, it is recommended to keep the appliance attached to the build platform during washing. It's important to reduce how much the retainer is handled before curing since it is still in a delicate state. Run a standard wash cycle using the following settings. Wash 1 for 3 minutes, wash 2 for 3 minutes, and dry for 3 minutes. This is honestly one of the most important steps in the entire workflow. After removing the print from the Pro Wash, it's important to fully dry any remaining IPA before curing. This is where a lot of curing issues can start. If IPA is left on the retainer, it can interfere with the curing process. This can result in a weaker appliance that is more prone to breakage over time. For best results, keep the retainer attached to the build platform while drying. This makes it easier to handle and allows you to clearly see any remaining liquid on the surface. Use compressed air and work across all surfaces. especially the grooves and intaglio areas where IPA can collect. Take your time here and make multiple passes as you dry. Continue until there's no visible movement of liquid anywhere on the retainer. Once the retainer is fully dry, you can begin removing it from the build platform using the print removal tool. At this stage, the retainer has still not been cured yet, so the material is delicate and can be distorted if handled too aggressively. When removing the appliance, hold the build platform securely by the handle with one hand while using the removal tool with the other. Instead of trying to remove the entire retainer from one side, gradually work across the arch. Lift with one side first, then move to the opposite side to reduce stress on the appliance. Avoid twisting or flexing the retainer during removal, as this can affect the final shape before curing. Once the retainer has been removed from the build platform, it's ready to cure. Do not remove the supports before curing. This is very important. At this stage, the retainer is still delicate and flexible. Removing supports too early can place unnecessary stress on the appliance and may distort the final shape. When handling the retainer before curing, only touch the supports whenever possible. This also helps prevent smudging and marking the surface of the appliance. When placing the retainer in the NanoCure, position it directly on the glass surface, not resting on the supports. This helps ensure a complete and even cure across the appliance. Before starting the cycle, also make sure the glass surface is clean. Any cured residue on the glass can interfere with UV transmission and affect curing performance. Start the curing cycle using the pre-programmed retainer settings. Once complete, allow the retainer to fully cool for a few minutes before handling. It's important to not handle the retainer while it's still warm to avoid distorting. Once the retainer has fully cooled, you can begin removing the supports. From here, carefully begin removing the supports using the snipping tool. Start by cutting the supports that connect the anterior and the posterior regions of the retainer. For most areas, trim close to the support contact point. In more delicate areas, like grooves or detailed surfaces, leave a small amount of material behind and refine it later during finishing. This helps reduce stress on the appliance and preserve surface detail. Once the supports have been removed, use a handpiece with a silicone burr at low RPM to smooth any remaining support material. Work carefully and avoid applying excessive pressure, especially around thin areas and internal surfaces. To restore clarity and improve surface finish, apply mineral oil and polish the retainer using a cotton buff wheel. Use light, controlled pressure and continue polishing until the surface appears smooth and glossy. Rinse with warm, soapy water and use a toothbrush to remove any remaining residue. Before delivery, place the retainer in warm water briefly to improve flexibility and help with seating. Once warmed, seat the retainer in the patient's mouth and confirm the fit. Over the first few minutes, the retainer will naturally adapt and settle into its final fit. When demonstrating how to remove the retainer, instruct the patient to remove it from the distal ends rather than pulling on one single point. At this point, the retainer is complete and ready for use.